back like we never left. Joey, again, we're doing one of these ranked series. Our third and final one that is up to bat is, of course, Harry Potter. Starting with the first movie, Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone, or Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone. I still don't
I
really
always
know
wonder,
what
yeah, I
the
always wonder why
yeah,
they
what the
changed the
lore
name of
is
that. I feel
there.
like Philosopher's Stone was cooler, but I'm not mad at Sorcerer's Stone. The word sorcerer is cool,
Mm,
you know, but it's just weird. Like, why? You know what I
right.
mean? Like, what's the reasoning? But anyways,
Yeah, so I have some notes here for us. Released in 2001, year I was born. Shout out. Um,
L year for real. Sorry,
directed by Christopher Columbus. Just kidding, Chris
huh?
Columbus. Not to be confused with Christopher Columbus, but Chris Columbus, who has also directed, Joey may have heard of it, Home Alone. Mrs.
Oh yeah.
Doubtfire also has writing credits for Goonies and Gremlins. Um, so quite the history there. Based on a 1997 novel of the same name, Warner Brothers bought the film rights for 1.6 million, and this movie had a budget of 125 million, and it grossed 974 million initially, and then over 1 billion with subsequent re-releases. Highest
That's
grossing
pretty
film of
good.
2001 and second of all time at the release, only behind Titanic. Um,
That's pretty decent. I'm not, you know what I mean?
right.
Like all things
Oh yeah.
considered,
Oh
that's
my
not
God. That's
bad.
that is fucking no. That is
You know
crazy.
what I mean?
I mean, second. Yeah. Come on. Currently it's 50th of all time. Of course, there's a lot that kind of
That's
fucks with that stat.
crazy. Can we
Yeah.
talk about that for just a second? That's insane.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
50th
That
all
there's
time.
50
It's
movie
that
that grossed a billion.
a billion
Yeah.
with a B. That's nine
Mhm.
zeros.
Mhm.
I don't think people really like
How much money that is?
understand
Right.
the
Yeah.
difference
They
between a million and a billion.
they
Even
bought
100 million
dude,
and
they
a
bought
billion.
the film rights for 1.6 million.
That
Then
that is
gave this
crazy.
movie
I was gonna say something.
125 million a budget and then
Yeah,
grossed a billion.
that's fucking crazy.
Yeah.
That
Um
is insane. That's like a bad deal. You know what I mean? That's like
yeah,
that's a bad deal.
right.
That's
They
hilarious.
got her when she was most vulnerable. Um
On God,
so another little
put that
fun
on a
fact
T-shirt.
about this movie. I thought this was interesting. So Spielberg was initially going to be the director for this, but then
Ah,
denied it
really?
because they wouldn't let him
Spielberg?
have it be animated. And he wanted some English
Oh,
American characters in there that was not approved of. Um, yeah,
oh,
she made that
interesting.
like
I did
a
not know that.
demand that they had to get the accuracy right for the characters and they had to be British.
I guess that's
So
cool. I
yeah,
like
that
that.
makes sense. No, I mean, but
Yeah,
I
I
do
like
think
that.
I'm like
Yeah.
it's really weird to me that Spielberg was insistent on it being animated, considering Spielberg has directed an animated movie before, but at this point, as far as I'm concerned, he has not directed an animated movie.
Yeah.
So
Thank God it
that's
wasn't
interesting.
animated.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think that could be really cool, but that just I don't know.
But as like a spin-off or something like that, or like
Right.
with like with a different type of project, not the like not the books. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Not the OG first adaptation of it. Nah, it's easier to say now than when it was then when it was the
Right.
first idea
Of course.
because we've seen how it's turned out. But yeah, let's get into it.
Yeah,
Let's
of
get
course.
into it.
Um, I'll start. Um, I
Go ahead.
so I've seen this movie a few times now. I'm glad we're doing this
Yeah.
again though, because it's been quite a while since I've seen them.
Yeah, me
So
too. Me too.
this wasn't like a whole new experience for me, but there were definitely parts of it that I did not remember. Um,
Yeah.
and overall, I quite like it. I think what this movie does best, and something that honestly is kind of strictly tied to this movie in a way, but it's got a very whimsical feel to the world building. Like I think the energy and aesthetic that's brought here is very I think whimsical really is the word. Like put a lot into it to make this world feel lived in and built out. And I
Hmm.
think that's what kind of makes this work so well for me is I'm just buying this world completely based off of what's
Yeah.
presented to me. And I think for
That's
2001
a good way to put it.
that's a great accomplishment. Um my only gripe and thing that I think that's holding me back from loving it is just the fact, and this I guess might be minor to some people, but I think the kid actors aren't the best here. And honestly, I feel like Ron is probably the best in terms of performance out of them. But like,
Yeah,
what's her name? Um, oh God, I'm
Emma
slipping.
Watson,
Who plays
Hermione.
Hermione? Yeah, yeah, Hermione.
Yeah, Emma
There's.
Watson, Hermione. Yeah.
She's not great in this movie, like at all. Like she is clearly overacting at points. And again, this is a small criticisms,
I
and
do
you
have
have to
something
give
to
it
say about
leeway
that.
because these are kids, and I understand that.
Yeah,
But there is something in this movie where whenever all the kids are on screen and there's no adults for them to communicate with, the acting takes a noticeable dip
yeah,
than when they're talking to, one of the more like Snape or somebody like that, or Dumbledore even. Um,
yeah,
so I guess that kind of makes it hard for me to latch onto it that much because I'm just not bought into these characters yet based off of this
yeah.
movie. And I want to specify that I'm talking about the kid characters though, because I think
Right, right. Right.
Snape is probably my favorite character in all of these movies, but he's great here as well, not given the most to do. And um, Dumbledore Dumbledore is an interesting character because I think he's like the one that changes the most throughout this series. So we'll talk more and more as we go on. But
Yeah,
in this movie, Dumbledore is really charming, and I kind of wish
I
the
love
movie
Dumbledore
presented
in
him to
this.
be like smarter than he is because he doesn't really like do a whole lot in this and seem to know that much considering who he is. Like it, I don't know. Maybe that's just nitpicking.
He has a presence to him. You know
He
what I mean?
does. No, he does. He's charming as fuck.
Yeah,
No, Richard Harris did a great job. Rest in peace as well. Um,
yeah.
and then my favorite, based off of this movie, and this will change as we go on. My favorite character in this movie is definitely Hagrid. I love
Oh, come
this
on, dude.
character, and this performance is
Hagrid is so
great.
great.
I think
Yeah,
the moment that he shows up to get Harry is where the movie really picks up and gets into gear. I do think it
absolutely.
starts
Yeah,
starts off a little trite, a little, like okay, how do you make somebody love a kid off the bat? Give them shitty parents and make them, the
make him an
redheaded
underdog.
stepchild. Yeah, exactly. And I
Make
think
him an
it's
underdog.
it's a little it's
Yeah,
a little heavy-handed, like it's a little too unambiguous for me,
yeah,
but I get it. But I think the moment that Hagrid, shows up and then we start getting into Hogwarts is where the movie really starts to shine. And again,
yeah,
what carries this movie to me for me is just this world building. I just like being in this world. And while I don't connect with the characters yet, I still really enjoy watching it. I still think there's a very magical feel to it that I think is very enduring. Um, Chris Columbus did a fantastic job with the direction. Um, and I guess my only really other criticism outside of everything that I've listed is I don't love the like the twist villain reveal and it being Quirrell. I don't know, like
Oh, really?
yeah, I think it was a little bit like I almost would
Interesting.
prefer it to just be Snape. I also I'm not criticizing the movie for this because obviously
Well,
this is off of
yeah,
source material. And also important note, I have not read the books. So I'm going solely off the movies here. Um, but yeah, that twist felt a little unnecessary to me. I also like the scene with the mirror where Voldemort's like in the back of Quirrell's head talking to the mirror. Doesn't look great. Um, again, 2001, I'll give
Uh,
it leeway, but it's a little
yeah,
rough.
yeah,
But yeah, I have a decent amount of nitpicks, but overall, um, I think that the world building, the some of the older characters, and the tone and energy of this movie is good enough to hold it afloat and still make it a good time. I think it's quite a good movie. I'll stop there. I'll let you go.
yeah. So, just a couple things that I wanted to pick up on. Um, One in particular is I do like how you mentioned the difference in kind of quality of the scene when the kids are acting.
Yep.
And I like how you mentioned that Hermione was kind of overacting, or Emma Watson was overacting a little bit. And I like that you mentioned that because in a few interviews that I've seen with Emma Watson and some of the other gang, she said that her overacting as a child was completely on purpose
Mhm.
because they wanted to establish her as like a very overly like witty, trying to be just kind of over the top, like just smart and analytical in a way.
Hmm.
And I think what it does for me is it kind of brings the books more to life because when you read the books, and for the family as well, like Harry's cousins, the what are the names? Not the I know that's Dudley, but like I can't remember the last names, but
Oh,
regardless,
Dursley.
is that their name?
Yep.
Dursleys?
Hmm. If you're
Okay,
talking
yeah.
about
So that
Dudley, his brother, yeah.
no, not no. Like regardless, Harry's cousins or their families aunt and uncle. I like the way that you kind of describe them as well, kind of like over the top, rude, and mean to Harry.
Yeah, like Dudley's like the biggest piece of shit for the small
Yeah,
portion he's in this movie. Like
yeah.
like over
I
the top
really,
piece of shit.
I have kind of a contrary view in a not like entirely where I can disagree. I agree with you, but the one thing I will say is that the overacting and the just over the top like style that they chose to portray them brings the books more to life because when you're writing it and it's just words on a paper,
Hmm.
you've got to like you've got to find a way to bring them to life in your head. You know what I mean? And I feel like the way that you see them on the screen and the way that they're talking and acting is how somebody might see them in their head because it's over the top the way that you write it, like with words. You know, like when you use like all these types of like metaphors and you're trying to describe them and personify these objects or whatever. You know what I mean? If they come to life so much more because they're being over the top in a way that you might see it in your head when you're reading it.
Yeah, I suppose. I mean, and again, I also kind of assume that they were clearly like that in the book. And again, that's where it's like it's
Yeah,
weird criticizing these movies because I don't really know if I'm criticizing the movie or the book. But
yeah,
so it's like I can't, give the director shit for adapting the source
right,
material properly if it's a source material I have an issue with. So again,
yeah,
I'm just letting everybody know that I do have some ignorance when we're talking about this. But um
uh, uh,
but I understand. I mean, I get it. And this isn't the only movie to do something like that, to be heavy-handed in
hmm
that way, to force an not, I don't want to say force. I guess to me it was force, um, but yeah, I think she specifically gets a lot better as the series goes on, though,
absolutely,
and her
yeah,
character starts to
absolutely.
really come together.
Everybody's arc
Right.
goes, their character arc is awesome, but
But what
hers in particular is very interesting.
when you're thinking about it, right? This movie has a big weight on its shoulders. It's an Iron Man type situation where it's like
Yeah,
you're kicking off something that is something like very beloved. Obviously,
yeah,
people revere Harry
absolutely, yeah,
Potter, and already book to movie adaptations have a very hit miss history. So
yeah. Like you'll like,
there was a
yeah,
lot weighing on this movie, and I think while definitely not the best in this franchise, I think that they do such a good job of accomplishing what they need to set this universe up to thrive.
yeah.
And
And
again,
just to cut you off real
yep.
quick, I just want to piggyback on what you were saying about how revered Harry Potter is.
Mhm.
I don't think a lot of people might not be aware, but when these books were coming out, the
Oh
lines
yeah.
to buy these books were outrageous. They did on HBO, they did a special for the Harry Potter franchise, like as a reunion, where a lot of the actors came back to speak about it, and they added a lot of kind of past and videos from when the books were coming out and stuff like that. And dude, when I tell you that these lines for these books, I I have never seen anything like it. The only thing that I can think of that is even comparable is was the drive-through line for that Whataburger that opened in Kennesaw.
I like the Popeyes chicken sandwich thing.
The Popeyes
Yeah.
chicken sandwich lines, but even those, if you can just think about it for a second, even those don't even hold a candle to the goddamn lines for a book. That
I
was crazy to me.
Yeah, and I guess we should also we should touch on J.K. Rowling, and I don't personally
Oh yeah, I was
endorse
gonna say.
uh,
I was about to say that
her
here in a second.
views,
We don't
but I
associate with her right
but I
now.
don't
She's
like.
kind of derailed herself.
Okay, there's a couple things that I want to say about her though. And this is just, I guess, maybe a bigger criticism on cancel culture in general. But while I don't agree with her views, and I think they are perhaps morally incorrect, I do also believe that she's listed among a lot of other people that have done way worse shit and literally traumatized people, and those are not the same. Having weird political views and sexually assaulting, sexually harassing, whatever the case may be, are different beasts. So I just want to throw that out there. I also want to add that she only gets royalties from this movie, and there's a bunch of talented people that worked on these movies that aren't pieces of shit that should be admired. So yeah, that's what I have to say about that. Just quick
Yeah,
disclaimer.
I completely agree. I'm glad you said that. Yeah,
Um,
I completely agree.
but yeah, I think again for me for it just being a first movie of a franchise instead of an adaptation to a book, I think it's pretty successful. Um, Mainly,
Oh
as
yeah,
I alluded to, the world building is phenomenal, and that'll carry throughout the series pretty much. But yeah, it sets the stage very well. It lets us know enough about the world, about the characters. It has the quarrel bit, um, or sorry, the Quidditch bit. God, there's so many cues, dude. Quirrell playing Quidditch with
true.
the quaffle. Like, Jesus Christ.
Hey, yeah,
Um,
say that 3 times
yeah,
fast.
exactly. But
Yeah,
which I love that kind of shit. I'm always a sucker for anything that just builds the world and has like what could be unnecessary but meaningful lore.
yeah,
Um, and I think this movie does a good job of not being rushed and feeling like it's trying to get through all the plot points. It takes its time appropriately. I think it's adequately paced. Um,
yeah. I
yeah.
agree.
Do you have any like big
For
criticisms? Like what's maybe your like least favorite part about
um,
this movie?
it's really interesting how asking for a criticism is a great question because it's hard to think of many for
Mm,
me right now. You know what I mean? Like usually people like to talk about what they didn't like first, but when I look back at this movie, it's hard to. I only really want to talk about the good things. But if I think about it, the one thing, some of the things I didn't like, um, I do agree that sometimes when it was just the kids alone,
hmm
it did kind of
The
feel like they were
performances
just
dipped a little
reading
bit.
off.
Yeah.
I know it's like reading off a script, like yeah, obviously that's what they do in a movie, but it was like they had like lines
Not
in their
as
hands. We were
natural
like
as it
looking
could
at
have
them.
been. Yeah.
Yeah, it wasn't as natural. It didn't flow as well, and that's not a bad thing. They were like how old were they? Like 11,
Oh
10,
yeah, young. Yeah.
maybe.
Definitely pre 13 for sure.
Yeah, yeah. They were very young, and they did a great job for what they were put into. Like the positions that these young kids were put into, they did a great job for that. Absolutely, but I just feel like it for something as grand as Harry Potter and that world and that universe. I just feel like it could have been done a little bit smoother, like their acting, and like maybe just the dialogue, the way they spoke, like the way that they like kind of presented themselves and moved about or whatever. It was fine, but I feel like when they were talking, it was a little. You could tell they were acting. You know what I
Right.
mean?
Right. I
And
also
that's to be expected of a child, but just to throw it out there.
right. We didn't touch on this, but we should. The John Williams score is predictably fucking
Oh yeah,
phenomenal. Holy shit,
yeah,
is it good? And
per
it's like
usual.
it enhances the movie so much, and like everything I was saying before about the world building, like this feels like just I'm getting taken to another place when I'm watching this, and I love that about it.
Dude, any
There's
Harry
so much
Potter, like
attention
it's
to detail here. It's just
yeah,
it's great. Like you can tell that there's a
just
lot of
yeah.
love for this franchise when this movie was done. Like that they
You know a soundtrack is like the score is good when you can hear it after however many years, just a little bit of it, and just it
you
takes
know.
you right
Yep.
back.
Yep.
Yeah, and that's how that score made me feel. It was
Also,
incredible.
I don't know. I think a few of these movies are. Maybe I'm wrong, but I always loved like the little Christmas, just like the not. I don't want to say shoehorn because it sounds like a bad thing, but just like it's Christmas, I guess.
Yeah,
which is funny. I think that
yeah.
happens a
At
couple
Christmas
times.
time, like the holidays, I regardless of your like your any type of religious belief or political or anything like that.
Right.
Just that holiday season and the way that you feel during that time, it's such a great coming together atmosphere.
hmm
And I love when like movies like this, like in any sort of like fictitious world does that. It just makes it feel more relatable in a way. You know what I mean? It
Right.
just makes me attached to them more.
I also
So
want to say I wish, and again, this is a first movie in a big franchise, so this isn't a huge criticism, but
yeah,
this movie is very, very, very focused on Gryffindor, which makes sense. But I almost
hmm
wish it kind of let it known that there's more parties than just that. Like a Slytherin
Yeah,
makes an appearance sometimes. They pan over to their table, like their long table a lot throughout the movie,
yeah,
but it's like you almost watching this, you almost would think there's only two of them, but there's not. There's more.
yeah,
So I kind of wish maybe we could have got some more of that. And I I like the Quidditch stuff in these movies a lot. The Quidditch scene in this one's a little odd. Like Harry at first, before he starts getting presumably mind controlled by who you think is Snape, but then learn is not. Um, he's kind of just like sitting there watching,
yeah.
and it's
He's not
kind of
really doing
awkward.
anything.
It's like,
It
okay.
is, yeah,
But again, not really a big gripe or anything, but I thought it was kind of funny. Um, but yeah, I don't have too much else to say either. I'm with you. I don't think there's too many big criticisms. I have a couple that I've already named, but I think overall it's just a really, really good time. Great start to a franchise.
yeah,
Um, and it definitely has a spirit and personality to it, which
for
is
sure.
always a plus. Because that is not something you can say a lot about a lot of franchise movies, especially.
Oh yeah.
Do you have anything you want
It's
to add before we get to reviews?
um, I guess just that overall, this movie accomplished so much in the span of time that we were given to watch it. This movie was about how much, like
2.5 hours?
2.5 hours?
Yep.
About yeah, about 2.5 hours, and they accomplished so much in this movie. Like I remember telling you that at the very end, like there was a lot that happened here, but the pacing was great. You know what I mean? Like there was enough scenes and enough arcs in here that kept me interested in the with the world building that you were talking about.
Hmm.
You know, I think they accomplished a lot, and that's very, very noteworthy. You know, like there's a lot of
Yeah.
people I feel like might overlook that,
And
like how much happens and how well it paced together.
yep. Hmm.
And I think that's what helps this movie a lot was the pacing because it's really easy to feel like when a movie's 2.5 hours, you're like bored by the first like hour and a half.
I
But this movie kept me
100%
going.
agree. I
Yeah,
think
this
that's
movie kept
probably
me going.
the best part about this movie is that it manages to have a good pace where it's never like dicking around too long, but it also takes its time to establish its world, its setting, its characters, and it, especially in this
Yeah.
first movie of this franchise specifically, it's very important to establish that. And this movie didn't rush doing that. So you got to
Hmm.
give him a lot of props for that, of course.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm trying to find a good one here. Here, I think I have one. Um, 4 out of 5. Connor Carey from Letterbox says rewatching this is definitely one of the most nostalgic and fun times I've had watching a movie recently. This is a rock solid start to such a great franchise. It's extremely faithful to the book in nearly every regard, and from the second this thing starts, you feel like you're in another world. All the child actors give pretty solid performances for their age and sell their friendship very well. The cinematography is gorgeous to look at, and John Williams' score is simply wonderful. The action set pieces still surprisingly hold up pretty well to this day, and the entire film just makes for an entertaining ride from start to finish. This isn't the perfect film I remember it being when I was younger, as there are sections of the movie that drag, and some effects that don't hold up quite as well as others. Overall, though, Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone took me on a trip down memory lane, and I enjoyed every second of it. I wanted to read this one because I think it kind of notes on something important that I think also another word to describe this movie is it feels nostalgic, but not in the sense of like a personal nostalgia, but there's just something about, and maybe it's just the whimsical nature that I was alluding to before, but this movie just has a nostalgic vibe to it that
Yeah.
I really like. And I'm glad he kind of pointed that out because I forgot to. Also, speaking of pieces, action set pieces, um, Harry doesn't cast a single fucking spell in this movie, which I thought was interesting, and I did not remember that being
Yeah,
the case.
now that you say that, that is completely true.
Not one.
He doesn't. That is crazy.
Just
For
wild.
yo, that is
I mean, the
crazy.
craziest thing he does is burn Quirrell's face with his hand, which
Like,
still don't
which
fully understand. But
yeah, but dude, he really doesn't. He really doesn't.
nope.
The whole time.
I
That's
I was like, dude, you have
incredible.
a fucking wand. Use it. Like, what's going on?
What the? The only time he really casts a spell is when he's finding his wand. at Ollivanders,
Yeah.
and he kind of just tests it out. You know what I mean? Like, well, that wasn't even really spells. That was just kind of like him using magic. But yeah, that's true. Oh my
But
gosh.
I don't know if that's true in the book or not, but I found that a little strange when I was watching it.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I'll get on to the next one here. Let's see. That one's a little long. Let me. This
So
one's
she
quick. I'll
said.
start with this one. Elliot gives it 4 stars. He says this movie holds up great. CGI doesn't look dated and actually looks pretty good. Our three protagonists are great from the start, and I can't wait to see them develop.
Yeah, I like that a lot. I like that he mentioned the CG. Like that was something that I was going to say earlier. The CG does not look that
It
bad at
doesn't,
all. And
especially
then
for
another
2001.
thing, yeah, another thing that I want to say is I remember talking to you about this during the movie as well. Is in the Great Hall scene during the Sorting Hat selection, where you walk in and you see all the floating candles in the air and all the students lined up and the headmaster with the Dumbledore and the faculty, like all of that group of people and surrounded by this kind of magical environment. All the candles that were there were real candles hung by really thin string. They hand did that whole thing. And I think that really did help, like kind of the atmosphere.
Hmm.
And they only used CG when they absolutely had to. And I think that helps a ton because with a movie like this, where it's literally magic, I think it's really easy to go overboard with the CG and rely on it. And they didn't do that here. A lot of the stuff was hand done, and they only used CG when they absolutely had to.
Yeah, I agree 100% with that. So I mean, so much seemed to have gone into like making this feel like a real world. I mean, obviously it's fantasy, but like it feels so lived in, and aesthetically
Yeah,
it's very consistent, which is nice. I have two more here that are just kind of I searched up the lowest ratings on Letterboxd. I'm just reading all these half-star reviews. Somebody said
interesting.
genuinely Chan. I'll call him out since he gave it a 1 out of 10, which is out fucking rageous. Um,
Holy shit,
he said
that's a
genuinely
that's
can't
just a hater.
fathom why anybody would enjoy these films. The weakest display of magic I have seen in anything. Reminds me of the dumb stuff I do as a kid, which is not something I'd want to spend hours watching. Boring magic aside, the world doesn't interest me, and I don't find any character visually or thematically interesting. Weak movie, weak series, weak author. You're just a hating ass hater,
Wow.
Chan.
Here's the thing about that. Like, it's if you don't like it and it's not for you, that is perfectly fine. Like I've said before, not every bit of media is made for every person. That's the beauty of it. You don't have to like it, and there's probably something out there for you. Go watch that. But to say that it's a weak series and a weak author, come on. Like,
Yeah,
what are you living under a rock? You
right.
can't just that's just not to be like objective because we're giving our opinion here. We're just talking about how we felt about the movie. But like these numbers transcend an opinion at that point. Once you reach a certain level of status and notoriety in this kind of in this business, you transcend a fucking opinion. Okay, you don't just get to say that it's a weak series, a weak author. This movie grossed $1 billion.
Right.
That's not
A
weak,
billion
dog.
people are not
That's
fucking
not.
retarded.
Yeah, like, and even though like $1 billion doesn't even mean a billion people,
Yeah.
I guarantee you over a billion people have seen this movie and liked it
Oh yeah,
at this
100%.
point.
Oh yeah, 1,000.
Like if Despacito has gotten 12 billion views on fucking YouTube, I'm pretty sure over a billion people have seen Harry Potter and liked it. And to say that's a weak series and a weak author, that's just you're dumb. Sorry, but you're dumb.
Garlic
That's
Toes
crazy.
gave it a half star. He said, "Fuck Harry Potter, bro. Why can't Hermione or jeez, how do you pronounce her name? Hermione? Hermione.
Hermione?
Hermione. There
Hermione?
you go. Why can't Hermione just shut
This
the fuck up and fuck off too? I hate Harry Potter so much." So Garlic Toes is upset.
bro's definitely a Star Wars stan for real.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, he's like one of those guys like it's like the most famous kind of like fictitious battle like franchise like Star Wars versus Harry Potter. Like this guy definitely look up Garlic Toes on a on a Star on a Star Wars review, but
We gotta figure out what it. I don't know. I gotta figure out
yeah,
what his favorite movies are. We're gonna turn this show into just us roasting people's letterboxes. Oh,
sorry,
he's got
buddy,
a
but
pretty good
yeah,
four. Everywhere, Everything, All at Once, Sunshine of the Spotless Mind, Donnie Darko,
hmm
and House. Those are all good movies. Can't be mad at
interesting. Yeah,
that.
yeah, dude. Regardless, that's outrageous, dude. It's not for you, man. That's
Yeah, it's
fine,
fine.
but like, fuck, dude. That's just weird.
Yeah, I agree. I don't know how you could. I could see why
I'm much
somebody say
more,
it's
yeah,
not their thing, but calling it outright bad, especially
yeah.
this
That one
movie
for
of all
sure.
of them, like some of them, I could understand having that opinion, but this one specifically, like, what's so bad about it? Like, it's
Yeah,
not. There's nothing really. Like, sure, there's some choppy acting at points, CGI that hasn't aged the best, but like, dude, I mean, it's by all means still, I think, a good movie. Like,
absolutely,
so I don't know. That's just me though. Joey, I want to know out of 10, what do you want to rank Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's or Philosopher's Stone?
man. You know, for the start of the franchise, looking back on it and how well it holds up today,
Hmm.
I'm gonna throw out an 8, man.
Okay,
I'm gonna
okay.
throw out an 8. That's pretty high, and I know that is, but you know, I what matters a lot to me is how well it holds up,
Mm,
and this movie
it
does
does.
just that. It holds up, and it there was a lot to grab onto. There was just enough to be attached to. The plot was there. There was a lot going on, and it all made sense, and it flowed very magically. No pun
Ooh,
intended.
I see what you did there.
I like this a lot. This movie was great, and I think an 8 out of 10 is a good score for me
Cool,
personally.
cool. I'm gonna go with a 7. I think it's really good.
That's fair.
That is a really
That's
good
very
score.
fair.
Um,
Hmm.
Again, reason it's not higher is just because of some of the things I said throughout. There's bits and
Hmm.
pieces of things I'm not a huge fan of in this movie, but overall I think it comes together in the way that it needs to, and it's a genuinely really good movie. I always say like a 7 to me is a movie that I'm not necessarily going to go out of my way to watch randomly. Like it's not a movie like that, but it's a movie that if someone were to recommend it or say they'd want to watch it, I'd be like, yeah, let's watch it. It's a great movie. You know, it's kind of in that little tier.
Yeah,
But
of
yeah,
course.
I quite enjoy it. I think it's good. I think 7 is where I'm at with it. Anything you want to add
That's
before we get
fair.
the hell out of here?
Nah, man, I think we covered it pretty well.
Yeah,
This movie was great, and I'm looking forward to seeing the rest of it
yeah,
again. It's
I'm
been a while.
excited to see because I genuinely have no idea how these movies are gonna rank for me. I have no clue.
I think I've
There's one
seen
movie that I'm pretty
the
sure of my opinion on. The rest of them are very up in the air, so it should be interesting.
yeah. I do remember seeing the last two, like uh, Deathly Hallows Parts 1 and 2, the
Yep.
most. But even then, like, it's been a while, so there's a lot of parts that I want to get a better look at, so I can give an opinion. But we'll get there.
Yep, of course, of course. Joey, thank you for being here. Audience, thank you
Yes,
for
sir.
listening. We'll be back with more of these. We're going to keep these churning. We have Hulk next, and then Rushmore after that, and then, of course, back to Harry Potter. So, yeah, thank you for listening. Thank you for being here. Adios.